John McMullen, Jody McDonald, a.k.a. Mac and Mac, are joined by the always well-coiffed Paul Domowitch here with us on Football Friday. Damo, the Kansas City Chiefs are the Eagles' next opponent, and some people are trying to make you believe it's the same as any of the other 16 regular season games they're playing. You buying any of that? I said the other 16 regular season.
Oh, okay. You got me.
When you say that some people are looking at that, are you talking fans, players, coach?
Yes, who will be on the sideline in Kansas City on Monday, coaches and players.
There's some of that, but I mean, they got 5 games ahead of them that are going to dictate their immediate fate this year. So, I mean, if they were meeting in the playoffs, it would be a different story. I mean, this game, obviously, there's a little bit of vengeance involved. But I mean, they've got too much of their season, too many big games left to kind of focus too much on this one.
Yeah, I was talking about the Dallas game pre-bye. That was the same thing, Damo. And, Nick was all week, and he brings up he made a mistake with the Beat Dallas T-shirt in his first game against Dallas as a rookie head coach. But he still talks about it. He still brought it up and talked in the meeting. I think it's just a way of his sort of manipulating what he wants from the players. After the game, after they won, after they survived, he was a lot more fired up. He's always a fired up guy, but he's a lot more fired up than usual. I think the Dallas game in the regular season, obviously, is bigger than the Kansas City game. Now, if they meet again in the Super Bowl, it's a different conversation. But I mean, Dallas that's their game. You think that's right or not?
Yeah, I mean, just look at the reality of the situation and of these next 5 games. The most important of these 5 are the 2 against the NFC teams, San Francisco and Dallas, because they're going to beating them helps you get the number 1 seed. You're going to win. I mean, an ideal scenario in these next 5 games probably for them is to go 3-2, win 3 out of 5. If San Francisco and Dallas are 2 of those 3 wins, it's beautiful for them because it helps their number 1 seed chances. Beating Kansas City is more personal than advantageous as far as that seed's concerned.
Agree on that front. All right, Damo, on your stat pack that's up on JAKIBSports.com right now, you talked about something that John and I have been talking about for weeks now here. The fact that the Eagle running game just isn't as good as it was last year, and trying to figure out why. John and I kind of believe that Jalen Hurts is a major reason why they're not as good as they are. His inability to run and the fact that defenses know about his inability to run. Therefore, I know the RPOs, they're just giving more attention to the running back who the ball could be handed to, and it's just not has been as effective as it was last year with Miles Sanders when Jalen was capable of breaking off 25, 30, 40-yard runs. You think there's more to it than that. Why do you think the Eagle running game is off?
Well, I mean, Jalen's certainly a factor, and it's not necessarily because of the injury. Starting with week 1 this year, teams were focused on him. Whether it was in the red zone or the rest of the field, they were not going to let him beat them. I mean, that was priority number 1 for them. He wasn't going to beat them with his legs. But I mean, my feeling is you look at the numbers. His numbers right now are not all that different than they were 9 games into last year. He's second. He's second in the league in rushing first downs right now, largely because of the tush push. But still, I mean, he's been productive in that respect. My feeling is that the offensive line isn't getting the job done, and you can't blame it strictly on Jalen. I mean, this line should be able to run on anybody. I think part of it's the line. I think part of it's the play calling. I mentioned in the story, I was talking to Brian Baldinger, who knows offensive line play and knows this offensive line better than anybody. And he said, he does those breakdowns on Twitter, and he doesn't even bother doing them on Mailata and Landon Dickerson anymore because they don't run behind them. I mean, last year, that was where they went. I mean, that was a heavy part of their run game was just having whoever was carrying the ball get behind those two big behemoths and gain 5 yards at a clip. That ain't happening this year. You know, last 4 games, DeAndre Swift has 1 10-yard run. You know, things like that make me believe it's more than just, you can't pin all of this on an injured quarterback. The last 4 games, they're averaging 3.1 yards per carry.
Well, Damo, I would say, and obviously Baldy, as you mentioned, knows offensive line play just about as good as anybody and does tremendous breakdowns. And certainly, if the Eagles aren't running the football behind Jordan Mailata and Landon Dickerson, that doesn't make a lot of sense with all that beef on the left side. I know their grades, their run blocking grades from PFF are tremendous. And Jody and I aren't blaming Jalen Hurts for the lack of efficiency in the run game. What we're saying is, because he's not healthy, that has, he manipulates so much spacing on the opposing defense. Yeah. And as you mentioned, early in the season when he was healthy and he wasn't successful, but teams were trying to take him away. Now, since the knee injury, it seems like they're saying, well, we don't have to worry about that. And then it's like DeAndre Swift, from my perspective, and Kenny Gainwell, from my perspective, are sort of left to their own devices. And I think they're not bad players, but I don't think they're top tier players. And I think without that boost they get from Jalen Hurts, I think that's the big issue. And Jody can chime in as well. Did I explain?
You said, well, John, that's John and I, we don't always see everything eye to eye, but we see this exactly through the same lens. Jalen, and let me take it one step further, get your take on this, Damo. The first couple of weeks of this season, as you noted, you believe that the other team said, we're not letting Jalen Hurts beat us with his legs. I think there was some of that, but there were more than even just a handful of plays when Jalen Hurts, after he escaped the pocket, got by the first line of defense, went into a slide. He didn't do much sliding last year. He did several slides this year, ran out of bounds. I remember last year a couple of times he's running out of bounds, and then at the last minute he would turn upfield and he'd try and either dance along the line and get those couple extra yards knowing he's going to be pushed hard out of bounds, and or just get a shoulder in there and try and extend a play. He's not doing any of that this year. We can speculate on whether it's Jalen's idea or it's Nick Sirianni's idea or Brian Johnson's idea or Howie Roseman's idea that they told him, listen, Jalen, you're a $250 million man now. We can't be taking as many risks as we did previously. I just don't think he's the same quarterback that he was. The last couple of weeks, you can write off to the knee. Previous to that, I don't think he ran the same way he did last year. And I'm not even saying it's a wrong decision. I'm just saying the evidence is it hasn't helped the other aspects of the Eagles running game. Do you think Jalen's playing the game differently this year?
He is. Now, whether, if you look, Jody, at the progression of most quarterbacks that can move like Jalen, as they get better as passers, they typically tone down the running. Sure. I think that's a part of it here. We've seen the last 3 weeks how good he's been in the pocket. But I think look at the last 2 years. He's gotten to the finish line, to the end of the regular season, banged up, not 100%, not in an ideal situation going into the playoffs. And I think they wanted to change that this year. Both he and Johnson and Sirianni were hoping, don't take as many chances, play it safe. It might cost us a couple of yards here on a play when you slide, but in the long run, it'll benefit us. I think it's a conscious decision to play it more cautious, but I also think there's a progression here with him getting better as a passer and kind of not feeling he needs to run as much.
Right.
All right, Tom, let's keep it on the offensive side. The other big issue this week is Dallas Goedert, who's going to miss multiple games with a fractured forearm, had surgery. Eagles still haven't placed him on IR, so that indicates they think he might have a chance to be back for that fourth game, which would be the game at Dallas. We'll see how that shakes out. The Eagles went through this last year. They lost Dallas for 5 games with the broken glenoid bone in his shoulder. They didn't change much from a personnel perspective, but they kind of shifted from a target perspective. They didn't throw the ball. They played Jack Stoll, but they didn't throw the ball to Jack Stoll or Grant Calcaterra. They kind of shifted to more Devontae Smith, more Quez Watkins at the time. This year it would be more Devontae and Julio Jones. Or is Albert O? They have a little bit of a wild card. He's athletic. He's had some success as a receiver in Denver. Calcaterra was back as a full participant in practice. He's a year older. Those are the receiving options. Are we going to get more from the non-Dallas Goedert receiving tight ends, or is it just Julio? Let's hope Julio has something left in the tank.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. My guess is that, they're going to stick with the mostly 11 personnel and do as they have. You're right, Stoll. I think last year in the 5 games that he replaced Goddard, he played 3/4 of the snaps. They played more 11 personnel last year after Goddard got hurt than they did even when Goddard was in. But they didn't throw to. You're right. They didn't throw to Stoll. I think he caught 7 passes in those 5 games. He's a guy who's going to catch a short pass for you every now and then. That's pretty much what he is.
Got good hands. I think he had 7 targets, 7 catches.
Oh, yeah.
He caught them all. Yeah.
And I have nothing to go on for this, but I mentioned in the column, they've in the games against, I think it was Dallas 2 weeks ago, and against the Jets, they used 21 personnel about 5 times. That's 2 running backs, a tight end. And now would be a good time to think about using it without Goddard in there. It gives you another receiver, gives you blocking help to chip on the, when guys are coming in. I mean, there's a lot of reasons I think it would work. But this isn't a 21 personnel team.
Yeah.
And I don't, unless,
I think Nick just woke up in horror. Now he's already up. He gets up early, but yeah. If he's going to be forced to run 21, he's going to have nightmares.
Yeah, I mean, you look that they used it, I think, 3 times against the Jets, and it looked on 2 out of 3 plays.
You know where I think that works? Who did I see that with? When you line up a receiver in the backfield, I think you can get them lost a little bit.
Yeah.
McVay used to do that a lot early in his tenure with the Rams, and for whatever reason, people aren't paying attention. I don't know. You have a wide receiver in the back. Deebo Samuel Cobb does it all the time. I saw it with Jordan Addison watching Kevin O'Connell, who's a Sean McVay guy. They line up those guys in the backfield, and defenses don't know what to do. That I'd like to see with Devontae Smith, or probably not AJ, but Devontae. I think that might work with Devontae. And by the way, it helps Devontae get off the line. He's not the biggest guy in the world.
I hear you, but I mean, these 2 guys, Gainwell and Swift, while they don't have the body of Deebo, they've got the skill set of Deebo. They can run the ball. They can run routes. I mean, I just think it's an intriguing thing that they should consider.
By the way, Tom, that is the nicest thing anybody said about Kenny Gainwell. He's got a similar skill set as Deebo Samuel.
Boy, there's a lot of Gainwell trashing going on this year.
Well, Deebo's a great player. Great player. I'm not gonna. Swift would be closer, but I'm not gonna. He's kind of different.
Let me ask you both about Swift. When he came in, a lot of people were excited because they thought a big part of his game was ability to catch the ball out of the backfield. And once I say catch the ball out of the backfield, you even have to define that. Is he lining up as a running back? Is he lining up in the slot? Is he lining up as a wide receiver? It does change the dynamic. but I'll just leave it at catch the ball as DeAndre Swift. He hadn't done a whole hell of a lot of this year.
I'd like to see a wheel route.
Right, something along those lines. When he was signed, what I think his number is going to be, I had him being much more effective in the passing game than he has been. Why do you think it hasn't come to at least my expectations might have been too high. I might have put too much of a value on it, but in my opinion, it hasn't been as big a part of their game as I thought it was going to be. Why do you think that is?
Well, I mean, catch-wise, he's about where I thought he would be, maybe a little under. I mean, he's got 30 catches in 9 games. I mean, I figured he'd be around 60 this year at minimum. What he hasn't done is gain much with those catches. He's averaging like less than 6 yards a catch, I think.
Yeah, 5.5.
Why that is
4.9, by the way.
I mean, typically when you've got a situation like that, you kind of put the blame on the scheme and the play caller, because I mean, this is a guy that's got great yards after the catch ability. He's just not. You watch when he catches a pass. You watch when Gainwell catches a pass. There's somebody there. I mean, they're not being schemed to get open very much. And I think that's where they've got to do a better job offensively, get these guys open, whether it's on a wheel route, whether it's, there's a lot of different ways to get those two open. They line them up a lot on the outside, but they don't, nothing much happens. But catch-wise, I mean, right now the running backs I believe they've got 48 catches in 9 games. They had 48 catches all of last season. So they are throwing to them. It's just not being very productive at this point.
Yeah. It's been forever, but I was thinking about that before week 1. DeAndre Swift, it was a big thing in practice when they obviously getting ready for the regular season. So Damo knows we get 10, 15 minutes of practice. And DeAndre Swift was working out with the receivers, and it was a big deal. Like, what is DeAndre Swift doing with the receivers? And the Eagles always do this for a reason. They're trying to get New England, obviously, he's going to be a receiver. they don't even throw him the football. The best example of that, when Jalen Hurts got hurt in Chicago, they were playing that game, and Damo knows they were saying, well, he might play. And there's no chance he was going to play. And they had the Friday practice at Lincoln Financial Field. And as Damo knows, they try to keep us as far away as possible. On that day, they were like, hey, Jalen's over there. Why don't you go take some pictures? they're inviting us right up. So something's up when the Eagles are trying to feed you information. But with DeAndre Swift, I'm a little surprised. I don't think, and I've been saying it for a long time, Jalen is not a dump off guy. So I think to get him involved, you have to call plays for him, wheel routes. You have to get him down the field. And they just don't do that. But I got a tough time complaining because I'm in a camp where I don't think Dallas threw the football enough to CeeDee Lamb. And he caught, what do you have, 12 catches in that game?
Right, 11.
Yeah, 11. They didn't cover him. Why are you stopping? Just to get somebody else involved? So, they've had so much success getting the ball to A.J. Brown and to a lesser degree Devontae Smith. Do I really need to get other people involved if they're not stopping those guys? Those are my best options. So I'm sort of torn. Where are you with that, Damo?
I mean, my feeling is, A.J. Brown's right now one of the best, 2 wide receivers in the league, probably. But somebody's going to slow him down somewhere. It might be in the Super Bowl, it might be the divisional round, but somebody's going to figure out a way to neutralize him, and you better have some options. And that's why I think it's dangerous at this point to just put all your chips on the deep ball to him or the deep ball to Devontae. I think, you look at any other great offense in this league, San Francisco, Kansas City's not great right now. But they're very diversified, like this team was last year. When if you stop the pass, they'd run all over you. If you stop the run, they'd throw all over you. We're not seeing that yet, even though you look at the numbers. They're certainly up at the top in and everything else. It's just there's something off about this offense that kind of concerns me.
All right, Damo, let's flip it over to the other side of the ball. And even though the Eagles players and coaches want to try and make you believe that the last time they played the Chiefs was just another game, they played it in late February for all the marbles, but it's just another game, and that's how they're looking at this one.
I
coming
don't
up.
think
It's
they
just
said the Super Bowl was just another game. That's a tough sell.
right. Well,
That's a tough sell.
Nick Sirianni did say we viewed the tape and we viewed it like we viewed every other game that we played before the team prior to. It had a little bit more emphasis. I mean, that's just me. But last year in that game, unfortunately for the Eagles, and I said this here on Birds 365, they were adversely affected by the field condition in the Super Bowl last year. They've got speed outside rushers who are not able to use their speed the way they usually did because of that field. Now, it was bad for both teams, and I don't think it was the sole reason or even the main reason why the Eagles lost that game, but I think it had an adverse effect. There's a chance for rain on Sunday, so they might not be playing in perfect conditions this Sunday as well when they face off against the Chiefs. I'm setting the over-under sack number at 2.5. Not the 7.5 that I said it against the Commanders earlier this year. Kind of overstated that one. 2.5 sacks of Patrick Mahomes on Monday night. You taking the under or the over, Damo?
You know what? I'm going to take the under. Just not because their rush isn't going to be effective, dry or wet. It's just that he gets rid of the. I mean, what's he been sacked 12 times this year? I think he just doesn't get stuck with the ball. He'll throw it into the ground, throw it at a running back's feet. He always has an option. He's as good as anybody. He's as good as anybody since Brady at just dumping the ball rather than avoid the sack.
Yeah.
Can the Eagles win the game with only 2 sacks?
I'm sorry, what?
Can the Eagles win the game with only 2 sacks?
Sure. I mean, if they get the pressure on them to hurry them into throws, I mean, look, Kansas City's offense isn't very good.
No.
They're averaging.
I think it's better. Get the ball out of his hands quickly because he's going to kill you when he extends the play. That's when he's going to kill you.
It is, except he's getting it out of his hands to who? He's got Travis meet the parents, Kelsey, and nobody else. So the problem is they don't know how to stop a tight end. So that's kind of a it's kind of
Kevin Byard's here now. Hopefully,
you hope, but he's been here.
Well,
the last 2
I
years.
think. Yeah, it hasn't been great, but it is a mid-season acquisition. He has had tremendous success over the years against Travis Kelsey.
Well, they're going to need it.
Talking about that.
Sunday.
Well, maybe Taylor helps him out. Maybe he's, worried about the parents getting along. Who knows?
You had written, I think, this morning about, the guys that are returning, and I think getting Roby back is going to be big.
He's a smart guy too. I will say this: Roby and Byard, you can tell they know how to play. That alone is going to make them better because nothing against Sidney Brown and Eli Ricks, but they're rookies who've never played the position before.
Yeah.
So they're kind of running around. There's communication issues. I don't know how much these guys have left in the tank, but I know they know how to play. And I think that alone is going to make the Eagles secondary a little bit better.
Yeah.
But you mentioned that Kansas City offense. Boy, it's hard to say when you have Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, but I'm like, I'm going against my own judgment because I often criticize people who criticize the Eagles for not having style points. Yet here I am. I'm looking at Kansas City and saying, I don't get it. But they're not good right now, offensively.
But let me jump in and defend Kansas City here. How many players do you think the Philadelphia Eagles have right now that have 100 yards receiving on the year?
100 yards total?
Total, 100 yards receiving for the year. How many Eagles?
Well, it would be AJ, Devontae, Dallas, DeAndre. I think that would be it.
That would be
Swift and Goddard.
Yeah, Goddard.
AJ, Devontae, Dallas, and Andre Swift. 4. How many did the Kansas City Chiefs have?
Yeah, but they don't have anybody they can rely on. That's the whole
Does
point.
it matter? If you spread the
think
ball
it
around,
does
we're now
matter
getting
because
back to spreading the ball around. Which is better? Give it to a small number of guys that many more times, or spread it around to everybody?
well, that's what we were talking about. I'm before when I'm talking like I'd
By
rather
the
have
way, just
AJ
so everybody who
Brown.
doesn't want to look it up, the answer is 9.
I'd
Kansas
rather
City's got 9 guys with 100 yards receiving or more. The Eagles have 4. They just do it differently than the Eagles. Doesn't make it lesser, but it's just different. They spread the ball around.
You know what?
yeah, but
Go back and look at some of the Eagle teams, Jody, back when they didn't have wide receivers.
yeah.
We always used to marvel about Donovan McNabb throwing to 8 guys in a game, 9 games. He had to. He didn't have a go-to guy. You know, I mean, I go back.
Like I'm not saying you can't win. All right, I'll put it this way. So I'm gonna offer you a magical trade, Jody. You can have AJ Brown, and I'll take Rashee Rice, McCole Hardman, Justin Watson, Kadarius Toney, and Sky Moore. What are you taking?
If you're
Which side do you
talking
want?
about individuals, then of course there's no conversation. AJ
Yeah,
Brown
that's my point.
Anybody else.
I'm not throwing to those guys because I can throw to AJ Brown. I don't want to throw to those guys. Now, I agree. There's got to be some diversity, but until somebody stops the guy, I can't be overly concerned. And the Eagles have some diversity. They have Devontae Smith. They have Dallas Goedert. You know, Julio Jones is going to get more involved. We'll see, but I don't know how much is left in the tank, but I expect him to be more important in the second half without Dallas Goedert. Yeah, they got a bunch of nobodies.
All right, I'll try this a different way. How has Patrick Mahomes, with such his lack of wide receiver talent on the team, thrown for more yards than Jalen Hurts?
Well, he's the best player in the world. I'm not criticizing Patrick Mahomes at all. I think Patrick Mahomes elevates all those nothings to that. They're a top 10 offense, amazingly, and that's because of Patrick Mahomes and to a certain extent Travis Kelce. I don't want to leave Travis Kelce out. And they have a good offensive line. They create, especially on the interior, they have a very good offensive line. So I'm not saying they don't have good players, but I am saying they don't have good receivers. I am saying that they just don't have good receivers right now. And Damo lived it with Andy Reid here in Philadelphia, with the James Thrashes in the world, the Todd Pinkstons, and the Eagles won a heck of a lot of games. But it gets ugly at times when you don't have receivers to threaten down the field. And yeah, I just don't think. I think it's a testament to Patrick Mahomes.
It is. I mean, go back and look at some of Tom Brady's receivers in a few of those years. I mean, I saw him get to the AFC Championship game one year where I think they lost to Indianapolis with guys that you wouldn't invite to dinner. I mean, they were just bad. and
then he got Randy. Remember the one year he had Randy? The first year.
Getting back to the I mean, whether it's thrown to Kelce or the cast of thousands that they have, they need their pass rush this week. It's not going to be so important that they get to Mahomes. They can't let him do what Dak did, what some other quarterbacks have done this year, which is extend plays. You let Mahomes get out of the pocket, and it doesn't matter who he's throwing to; he'll find him open. This would be a good week for the mush rush. I mean, they need to just keep him in the pocket, and if it gives him a fraction of an extra fraction of a second to throw, I think it would be worth it if you're keeping him in the pocket, because I think it would be a better strategy.
That's tremendously interesting. I hadn't even thought about the mush rush, which I think, if well called, well timed, can be a really effective play, but you need to be skilled at that. The Eagles have not had one play this year. I said to myself, "Ooh, that looks like a mush rush." Do we know that they can even do the mush rush? That they have players that could do the Damo? I think it's a great suggestion, but I got no bloody idea whether it would work or not.
Either do I. 'Cause you're right. You're right. I don't think they've used it at all. So
No, they're not breaking that out at
Yeah,
this
but-
point. You know, it's interesting though, because Patrick's weird in that I think people look at mobile quarterbacks and they talk. Obviously, you start with Lamar Jackson and Justin Fields and Jalen Hurts, and even now, if you want to go to Josh Dobbs, and everybody forgets that Patrick Mahomes can run the football, because he doesn't do it a lot, but when he does do it, it seems to be a backbreaker, like he did in the Super Bowl. By the way, the Eagles are missing Nakobe Dean. I think we haven't talked a lot about that, Damo. Is that because Nicholas Morrow is better, or is it because people just don't care about Nakobe Dean? Which one is it?
I mean, I've been before he got hurt, I was underwhelmed by. I mean, I was a big Nakobe Dean fan.
I know everybody was, and now it's like nobody talks about it.
Yeah, I don't think he played all that well. He was mainly relied on. His coverage was not. It was subpar. The run, they rely on their front forward to stop the run, and they've done a good job with that. The linebackers they've needed in coverage, and Nakobe has struggled some in that. So I mean, I think Morrow will be fine. I don't think that's I think he'll be okay.
All right, last one for me, Damo. I take it with the way you guys just described Patrick Mahomes that he's the leader in the clubhouse for the MVP again, right?
Not so much.
Probably. I think this game will define. I mean, if somebody has a big game, in other words, if Kansas City wins by 2 touchdowns, Patrick plays well. Yeah, he jumps ahead, and he might already be ahead because of his reputation.
He's got to be ahead, right? Because you just told me he elevates all this non-talent around him.
The
we
best
don't
player.
say that about Jalen, do we? Since he's got
AJ with all due respect, and I've said with all due respect to Jalen Hurts, and I said Jalen Hurts, and I've said it pretty consistently. I said he was the best player on the field in Super Bowl 57. Best player on the field. With all due respect to Jalen Hurts, if he's the best player again on the field and the Eagles win on Monday night in Kansas City, the best player in the world is still Patrick Mahomes. I mean, he's the best. He's the best quarterback, and obviously, because of the impact of that position, that's not going to change. Now, a lot of people, they don't like to vote for I always go back to the NBA. Michael Jordan could have won the award every year. He didn't, because people would get sick of voting for him. LeBron James, same way. Some people get sick of voting for the same guy. So MVP, yeah. But Jalen has a chance to seize the lead if he plays well in this game and the Eagles win it pretty convincingly. That's how I see it.
Do you agree with that, Damo?
Yeah, I mean, it's just too early to. I mean, if you're looking for a mid-season somebody to pick an mid-season MVP, yeah, it would probably be Mahomes right now with Jalen a close second. But there's a bunch of guys that I think
Lamar's in there too. I think
exactly the fortunes of their team and the way they perform in the next 7-8 weeks is going to decide whether it's one of those two, whether it's Christian McCaffrey, whether it's Brock Purdy, whether it's Lamar Jackson, whether it's Tua. I mean, there's like, I mean, right now, I think there's just a big gaggle of people that you could put in the MVP conversation right now.
I agree with you. It's too early, but I'm kind of on the same page with John with this one. But maybe even more so on the outcome of the game. Because Jalen outplayed Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl last year. Patrick Mahomes was the MVP because his team won the game. Same thing this year. Even though I think Jalen could put up as good, if not better, numbers than Mahomes, got to win the game. Eagles, his teammates have to give him a helping hand here. He got to win the game. If he wins the game, I think he jumps to the lead of the MVP standings. If he doesn't, then it's unquestionably Mahomes. We can throw all those Lamar's, Purdy's, Tua's into the mix, but they're all looking up at Mahomes because he is Mahomes. Damo, always a pleasure. Appreciate you jumping in with us each and every single Friday. Now, you going to wear that shirt all weekend? Is that your lucky shirt? You're going to keep it on until Monday, or you're going to wash it between now and Monday?
I'll probably put on a different one for tomorrow.
Who wears the same underwear? Somebody wears the same underwear to the game every week. Was that I forget who that was, but
This is from the Andy Reid Aloha collection.
Very nice.
Nice.
We'll tell Andy, but we won't tell any of the people who are watching us right now that you're wearing Andy Reid wear going into the games.
By the way, Andy did a conference call, Damo. Only the old school coaches do conference calls. I give them a lot of respect for that. All these new guys, I don't have enough time. Can't make 10 minutes. Yeah, they all run the same damn offense, but they can't spend 10 minutes on a conference call. I digress.
Loves Philadelphia. Philadelphia will always be. I mean, he's going to go into the Hall of Fame probably, even though he's going to has won multiple Super Bowls in Kansas City. He'll always be an Eagle.
Yeah.
You think he's going in as an Eagle over the Chiefs?
Well, they don't really go in as something in the
right. It's different.
There's no cap. They just have a bust. You don't have to pick. In baseball, you have to pick a cap. Yeah. So,
Damo, a pleasure, buddy. Thanks for jumping in, bud. We'll talk to you again
next time. Thanks for having me, guys. Take care.
Thanks,
Domowitch, his stat pack on JAKIBSports.com, a must read for all you Eagle fans. Although John and I disagree with him a little bit. He's giving Jalen Hurts a little bit more of a bet. And again, I have to pick and choose my words carefully here. It's not a critique or a criticism of Jalen. It's just a notation that because Jalen isn't as effective running, last couple of weeks, certainly understandable with a bum knee, first couple of weeks of the season, at least my read was he wasn't attempting to be as good or aggressive and productive as a runner as he once was, and it probably was very much a group decision. And I'm not even saying the decision is wrong, because I got $250 million invested in the guy. You want to keep him on the field. But I just see it as the explanation as to why the Eagles' running game from the running backs has not been as effective. He's blaming it on the offensive coordinator. What the hell are you doing? Why aren't you running behind Mailata and Dickerson on the left-hand side?
I think, I'll get in trouble. I'm getting a lot. The running backs are average.
Yeah, I like the running backs a little more. Well, I know I like Swift. I think Kenny Gainwell is average at best, although the coaching staff still has more faith in him than it seems like I do or the general public does. I still think you don't go for $175 by mistake. I think there are questions to be answered as to why DeAndre Swift hasn't been as effective over the last several weeks. Could this be a breakout week for them against the Chiefs? Their run defense is good. Not like the Eagles. Eagles have a much better run defense than Chiefs do. What kind of numbers will DeAndre Swift be able to put up? We know it's a showdown between Hurts and Mahomes, and the ball will be flying, but you need that balance. Who's going to be able to run it more this weekend?
I would say history is littered with big running games from average backs occasionally. Most notably would be Timmy Smith in the Super Bowl. One guy I covered that nobody will recognize, Scotty Graham, I think once ran for 166. It happens. Doesn't happen often, but it happens.
Understood. But he is still top 5 in the NFL in running at this stage. I know most of it came from 2 games, and you got to look at it, but the big picture is every single game. So they all count. So you can't, except for the 175 he got against Minnesota. Except he got 175 against Minnesota. So he's a top 5 running back in the league as per how many yards he's rushed for this year. That's just, you can look that up rather easily. He's McMullen, I'm McDonald. We are Mac and Mac, Birds 365. Got a good guest coming for you in hour number 2. Who would that be? Well, stick around and find out.